Welcome to the Dice Forsaken podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jono.
And I'm Jackson. Thank you for giving us a listen a second time.
Yeah.
Not sure why you didn't flip yourself on that.
We're 2/3 to being better than 50% of the starter podcasts out there, I think. Well,
Absolutely.
we will be at the end of this.
Well, after this, yeah. And
Yeah.
also, let's be realistic. I mean, I was pretty impressed that we managed to get more than 2 views last time round.
That's true. We didn't quite hit triple figures. There were 94 views last time I checked, which was yesterday, I think.
Yeah, that's a pretty good innings.
So,
that's better than I thought we were going to get. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I'd have to put it on repeat to get more than 10. So, yeah.
Does it really count if you're jacking the numbers up yourself?
No one has to know. No one has to know.
Well,
yeah. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We're gonna go into our hobby catch up. What's been happening in the hobby for you, Jackson?
Yeah, before we do that though, I think you probably have some admin that we want to shout out.
Oh, that's true. I even wrote this. Yeah, of course, the inevitable admin that everyone has to do. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could hit like and subscribe. We very much appreciate any support you guys can give us. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcast or Spotify Podcast or whatever other podcatcher you're using, please give us a rating or whatever system of hearts or thumbs ups or whatever they use. That'd be great. And lastly, you can find us on Facebook under the Dice Forsaken podcast. If you could flick us a like on there, that would also be awesome. You can keep up to date with what we're doing. We throw a few posts up between episodes, and we'll also be announcing when episodes are up. Your few precious seconds help us send our hobby jibber jabber to the world more effectively.
Yep. Well, if anyone's wanting to listen, let's jibber jabber. So you were asking about hobby. I mean, obviously we've had Christmas and New Year's, so I think it's fair to say we've both done a fair bit of hobbying. Whether we're going to talk about all of that,
some of us been super secret hobbying.
Yeah, well, CanCon's coming up. You've got to be a little bit, secretive.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, done a stack of hobbying. Obviously, between Christmas and New Year's, we have, a lot of us take off some time from work, and it's been a great opportunity to get a few games in, do a few different things. So there's a few things that happen each year. Just a group of mates, we all catch up and play some games a couple of days over the break for me, and you were involved in some of it too. So yeah, where were we at from last time? So last month I made some grandiose proclamations about painting all of my Soviets. I did get the snowsuits done. They're not based.
Good.
But there's like a bajillion of them painted. Yeah, no, well,
the white suits are done.
The white suits are done. The details are done. They just need their bases done. But I'll save it when I can do all, 80 odd figures in one go. So that was kind of my big hobby project at the start of the month. Obviously starting to nail down what I want to take to CanCon, which, we'll refrain from speaking about that quite yet. And in the meantime, I finished up work and decided to pull my finger out and finish painting up my Frostgrave warband, which, if you're following us on Facebook, I've shared a few photos of. That was a really enjoyable project to get that group of 10 orcs done. I really should be painting my CanCon stuff. Instead, I've been spending time on another batch of 6 to mix into there, because I also, over the break, read through the Baron's War rules from start to finish. So I'm going to be a bit of a dirty cheat, and I'm going to just do up a stack of orcs with appropriate equipment for the meantime, because I have a stack of orcs that need painting. So when we get Baron's War out and actually start playing it, I'll use my orcs as proxy figures. Once I am happy with the rule set,
orcs.
Yeah. Once I'm happy with the rule set, obviously I will probably cave in and get myself some military orders or something to mix in for a proper actual historical warband for playing the historical side of things. But in the meantime, I guess I'm building an army for Warhost, which is the fantasy version of Baron's War. And I'm working through my backlog.
There's 4 or 5 of us who are interested in getting into Baron's War, at least in our close friend group.
Yeah.
And Jackson and I have definitely talked about doing that and then branching into Warhost, because I've got a bunch of fantasy figures I'd like to use as well. So
yeah, and I'm using it as an excuse. I managed to, late last year, I have a backlog of Medbury miniatures metal orcs that I've acquired each CanCon, and then every year I go back to CanCon and I start buying more, and I feel really bad about the fact that the bit I bought from last year still isn't painted, but I'm still making it grow.
Yeah.
But yeah, then also last year I managed to pick up a stack of the, nearly 30 odd of the original 2001 Metal Fellowship of the Ring orcs. which were fairly hard to come by, are less hard because Games Workshop did some made-to-orders for them. But I picked up an absolute stack for a pittance, and they're all amazing sculpts. So it's been cool working on those. They're suitably orky and mishappen and inconsistently equipped. So
Excellent.
yeah, so working on those. Couple of games between Christmas and New Year's. We played with a mutual friend of ours, Richard, who runs a big mega narrative game each year. This year it was Bolt Action. We did a similar one to celebrate another friend's birthday, Sebastian. Both of those were 5,000 point games or nearly 6,000 point games with 4 or 5 players played on a single table in a single day. So kind of small on the scale of the large-scale narrative super bolt action games we play, but still large enough to be well outside the ordinary.
Yeah, big enough to cause mayhem and have some fun.
Yeah, it's good to stretch the rules in a different way, play something that's a little bit historically themed. So one was a hypothetical invasion of Leningrad, or recapture of Leningrad. So what happens if the Finns and the Germans captured Leningrad and the Soviets had to attack to try and force them back out of it. And the other was a modified version of the landings at Leh in the New Guinea campaign. So that was a good bit of fun.
Yeah, lots of fun.
The only other thing I really did is I caught up with some mates I used to play Lord of the Rings a lot with. We haven't really, we catch up maybe once a year. And we played through some narrative scenarios from the Quest of the Ring Bearer supplement from last edition, because none of us have really updated to the new edition. A friend like Matthew had been painting up his Weathertop, especially to play narrative scenarios, literally the entirety of last year. We spoke about doing it last December, and he pulled it out this December, and we got to play the attack on Weathertop and one of the Amon Hen scenarios. So that was pretty awesome.
That table looked amazing in the photos.
It was fabulous to play
really
on.
Cool.
And we played it's a tiny short scenario. So he spent like months working on it. And we played the same scenario 3 times, and it took us all of like 25 minutes each time.
Doesn't matter. It's worth it.
It was worth it for the visuals. The photos were amazing. One of us took on Aragorn, the other took the 4 hobbits, and the other took the raids. And we played it 3 times, and we cycled through it. Each of us played a different set of figures. It was awesome.
It's all about having fun, so...
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool to do some narrative. Yeah. I managed to fit a lot of narrative in amongst CanCon prep over the break. So yeah, back at work now.
Good to mix it up.
Yeah, life continues. We'll keep painting for CanCon. How about yourself?
Well, since our last podcast, played a few games. I've had to get a few CanCon prep games in, trying to get myself ready for that. It's my first time going to CanCon, so I want to try and put in a decent effort and give it a decent go.
You'll be capable. You can do it, man.
Yeah, I wrote a list. I rewrote that list. I changed that list. I wrote another list, and then I sort of settled on something. Then they dropped the mission, so I changed my list a little bit.
Well, that makes 2 of us, so... This is actually the first CanCon I haven't settled on a list in December and played it with minimal iterations right through to the end of CanCon.
It'd also be one of the first CanCons where they've dropped the missions before list of missions, right?
No.
No? Okay.
No. It's not my favourite way to do it. I do prefer not knowing what missions are. So we actually rock up on the day, potentially, or at least, until after missions are dropped, but that's fine.
But yeah, I've been frantically trying to get some painting done to catch up with a bit of my backlog. So I've had a few things sitting on the shelf for a while which are coming out for CanCon, so they're getting painted up. I had to build a couple additional weapons teams and stuff, so I've done that. It's sitting in front of me. It's probably about 60% painted.
Yep.
Maybe a bit more, so that's good.
Nice.
I have also got sitting in front of me on my hobby desk a bunch of Baron's War figures that have been primed, plastics and metals, and I've settled on 60% of my Frostgrave retinue, so
nice.
They're not primed yet. They're just sitting there waiting for me to get the edge primer out next time because they're all metals. And I've been building some knights and mounted sergeants mounted knights and mounted sergeants for Baron's War as well. A friend and I split a box of each. So we got 6 out of each box. So I've built my knights, and they look suitably medieval, which is cool. And I've got 3 sergeants built and 3 more that I just got to decide how I'm going to load them out because of the 50% rule that Baron's War has, where you only have to have 50% of your guys armed with a weapon to be WYSIWYG. I'm trying to work out whether I capitalise on that or just go whole hog and give them all spears.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, yeah, that's been my hobby for the last month.
Have you made any hobby-related New Year's resolutions? I mean, I know that's kind of the in thing to do.
I hate New Year's resolutions, but I have set myself a goal. I'm not calling it a New Year's resolution. I'm calling it a goal for the year. I'm gonna copy a few other people I've seen out there who've done the same one, and it's to paint 100 figures this year, whether they be tanks or units, models or whatever. Yeah, so the CanCon painting should put me in a decent place to start off with.
Yep, absolutely.
And then I've got Baron's Water knock on with, which will also pick up that a fair bit. So I think it's doable.
Yeah, nice. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's definitely doable.
Yeah.
You can definitely make that work.
Yeah, I have no idea how much I got painted last year, so I'm going to try and remember
It'd be cool to track it, yeah.
take photos and track it, yeah. I've got my app which tracks it, but I also neglected to fill that in, so I'm going to have to sit down at some point and fill that up, catch up with that.
And then update it a bit further.
Yeah, I've got some stuff that I've built since and whatnot, so I'll have to...
What app is that?
I'll just open my phone and have a look. It is called Figure Case.
Yeah, okay.
And it's quite cool. It gives you a red through to green graphic for painting progress of your collections, and it's not got any particular brand or anything in there. You just free type in, like, you set up categories and stuff, so you can do it however you want. And it gives you a percentage tracker and all that sort of thing. And I also use it to try and help myself not purchase duplicate metal figures.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
That's a good way to use it. I mean, I've looked at that before, and I'm not sure whether that just would make me feel horrified or excited
yeah.
at seeing what I haven't done or what I'm doing.
Scary,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. What's news in the world of hobby, Jackson?
I think, look, on the bolt action front, obviously, we're recording this a couple of days after the NDAs for the armies of Japan have lifted on all the content creators that have gotten early access from Warlord. So on the bolt action front, we're seeing a stack of stuff coming out, stack of interviews, or not interviews, episodes, podcast episodes, articles, etc. I think
You've listened to about 4 days straight of Japanese book reviews, haven't you?
Yeah, I've listened to 5 episodes, read 1 article, kept an eye on a couple of conversations happening in various Discord and Facebook servers. It is, look, every single one I have read has seen something different, like said something different. I mean, you've got like the couple of Australian people commenting on it, and it's very much like talking about the theme of what's being possible. There's some things that are inconsistent what's being said by other people. There's a couple of US guys doing the same. The Europeans are frothing at the mouth over the fact that they think close combat is going to come back. So there's a lot of chatter about how busted the new Japanese book is from a close combat perspective. So I don't know. I'm going to refrain from passing any judgment until I actually have it in my grubby paws.
Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? You can listen to as many things and everyone has a slightly different take, and
yeah, absolutely.
Everyone's misread something or not misread something.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, from what I can see, there seems to have been some pretty targeted discussion, like targeting by Warlord of things that were perhaps too good or too cookie cutter last edition, that have been toned down or repointed, or new mechanics have been shuffled. Like Banzai copped a bit of a nerf, a few other bits and pieces, spear fighters and kind of militia units have been toned down, but also made way more thematic than they were, because they kind of weren't very thematic before. So there's that. There's other discussions about what it does to the game from other perspectives. I think, and look, we're going to get into this when we get to our topic, I think we're finally entering unknown territory as far as bolt action goes. We can talk about that later, definitely. What that means. Yeah. But we're looking at stuff that is being fleshed out in a way that it never was in V2. And accordingly, there's some fairly interesting dynamics that are changing. But yeah, we'll leave that to a later discussion. As far as new rules go, yeah, I read Baron's War. There's kind of, that's looking like an interesting rule set. I think that's the first rule set I've ever looked at and gone, you know what? You could play it with a table of nothing but hills, and you'd probably have a fairly dynamic terrain, like intensive game.
Yeah.
I've never actually seen that in a rule set. It's got this funky mechanic where basically your charges, you can get a couple of bonus dice for stuff, like for attacks. If you're charging
using height of hills and stuff like that.
Yeah, using your height of hills.
Yeah.
If you're charging up them, it's harder. If you're charging down them, it's easier to get attacks, like a bit more punch in when you're charging down them. There's some interesting interactions with range based upon the height of the hill you're on, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So that looks interesting. That was probably the thing
And
that really jumped out to me about that rule set. But I need
and
to
we
get it on
both
the
said,
table.
one of the first comments both of us said after reading them, I'd already read probably 3/4 of it before Jackson had, was that we both really liked the way the unit cohesion worked.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
that-
You pick at whenever you finish, like move something, you pick one model, and everything else in the squad needs to, or unit needs to be within 2 inches of it. It's
Yeah.
like cool. It's a really elegant, permissive way to do unit cohesion, especially for something that's like it's a medieval game. So
Yeah.
it's an elegant way to do it. So it had a real, I'm not your mum, make it work yourself kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And the news from that front is that their Wargames Atlantic, well, they've been sort of hinting at it for a bit now, but Wargames Atlantic announced that I think it was the first half of 26, but don't quote me on that because I don't have it in front of me. They're dropping the King John supplement, which that's pretty quick for a book that's only really been out for a year or a year and a bit.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things, it's a clear case of a smaller company being super mobile and able to just kind of turn and pivot to a new project, but also that's a phenomenal amount of work.
Yeah, the book looks huge. Like it's quite a large number of pages in it, and from what I've seen on the Facebook and a couple of interviews I've seen with Andy Hobday, it's quite a lot in there. But yeah, so that looks pretty cool. Give us a heap more scenarios and characters and stuff to go on with.
That's a system that has a lot of scenarios already.
Yeah,
It has a similar mechanic to the way Bolt Action works in that you can roll for a deployment type and a mission and whatnot.
yeah,
But it's got more. Like there's a stack. There's
Yeah.
like 18 scenarios and like 9 deployment zones.
and that's not even bringing into it the other supplements from V1, which have PDF V2 makeups.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
Yeah, there's
100%. And the other thing, I've got my first game of Chain of Command 2nd Edition this week, I think, at this stage.
Very nice. Yeah,
It'll be interesting. It's with my normal gaming crew who really haven't played a lot of Bolt Action for a long time, and especially not since V3 came out.
yeah,
So we're pulling out our collections and doing a bit of Chain of Command.
yeah. That'll be cool.
The interesting thing with that is there's always been this weird friction between Chain of Command players and Bolt Action players who say one's better than the other or whatnot. And there's a lot of, Chain of Command is more historically accurate from a historical perspective, or it's more of a simulation from a historical perspective. Like, the more I look at it, not that I've looked at it in detail, the more I think that, they're both war games and therefore not particularly great and definitely not accurate representations of real life. But it'll be really cool to try something different. Take a break from CanCon prep. It's also cool to get miniatures out and have to play a historical-ish loadout of weapons and support
Yeah,
units.
yeah. I've got the V2 book, and it looks pretty good. I haven't read it in depth or anything, but I've had a bit
looks
of a look
very
through it.
nicely presented.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I
Chain
think
of
they've done a
Command,
really nice job.
from what I've seen, has always been an excellent rule set.
Yeah,
We never played
Yeah.
second because we had a few issues with some of the rule mechanics, so we actually did try, not second, tried first.
tried first. Yeah,
And I think my mates played 2 or 3 games of it. We never went back. Something to do with the assault mechanics. There's also like probably 8 or 9 years ago that we did that, so don't
Yeah.
quote me on it.
yeah.
We stuck with Bolt Action, but it'd be cool. It's going to be cool to do something different. So
Yeah, nice.
that's as far as wargaming goes. Did you get any cool hobby stuff for Christmas that you want to chat about?
Yeah, so since our last podcast, I've been particularly spoilt because I'm also a December baby. So, yeah, I got the physical copy of the Warhost rules,
Yeah,
which
nice.
is very cool. I've got the PDF, which I bought when they did the Kickstarter for the elves and the orcs. I picked up a few of the elf characters just to have a look, and I grabbed the PDF of the rules. I didn't quite realise at the time that you needed... Oh, no, I think I got a copy of the first edition Baron's War rules in PDF as well. I just never went anywhere. I didn't have time. But, yeah, so I got the physical book, so that's cool. I'm a big fan of physical rule books. And my parents and sister also got me the Saga rulebook, which is the updated one with all the FAQs included,
Nice.
as well as the Age of Crusades and a couple of sets of dice. So that's cool, because that's going to tie in nicely with all my Baron's Wars figure.
Yeah, we'll be able to duplicate that army across multiple game systems.
Yeah, so I'm hoping I can anyway.
And with a bit of work, you could probably grow that into something for, like, I don't know, Hail Caesar or Infamy. Those
Yeah,
slightly larger games.
Yeah, there's plenty of options with some of the historics, like crossing over into different rules and that. One of our friends, also, when I told him I got the Saga book, he was very excited because he's been trying to play Saga Age of Vikings for quite some time. So that's encouraged him to pull out all his Vikings and build them up and paint them. So we might have a little bit of Saga to talk about at some point.
Yes.
But we'll see. We'll see. I gotta try and focus in a little bit, and CanCon. So
you and me both.
Yeah, I've had a bit of the ADD when it comes to hobby this last month, but yeah, so...
No, absolutely. Probably for me, I'm going to shout out 3 things that are really kind of 2 things. When I was doing up my Frostgrave Warband, before I went on break, I went and bought myself a couple of different paints to experiment with. And I'd heard these great things about the Vallejo metal color, like the new true metal color paints. And you know what? I'm going to dump all of my other metallics in the bin. They are that good. Like, they're just so easy to work with, so easy to layer up. Like, try it. They are so good.
I've painting some of the CanCon stuff. I've used some of the old Vallejo metallics, but that's because I was using them on other. So for consistency, I've hung on to them, and I've used them on them. But yeah, I've got some to try, and I'm pretty excited. I've got a bit of a different colour theme in mind for my Warhost elves. I'll hang on to that in my head for a bit, though, before I announce it.
That's a conversation for another game, I think, another episode.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
The other thing I want to chat about... oh, sorry, I cut you off then.
Oh, no, that's all right. I was going to say, you know, not that I'm any kind of painting genius or mastermind, but I want to make sure it works before I get too excited about it.
Yeah, well, you know, test figure's always a test figure, man.
Yeah, that's right.
So no, the other thing I was going to shout out is I deliberately didn't get any wargaming stuff for Christmas. When everyone asked me, what do you want? I went, not wargame stuff. Except I got Dice of War did a 3-for-1 sale on their World War II dice.
3 for 2.
3 for 2 sale. So I had won a set of Soviet dice, and then I picked up a set of Australian 9th Division, Japanese, and Hungarian 1st Parachute Assault Battalion dice. And good grief for those dice, lovely. And super free priced. Yeah. I mean, there's sets of dice, 16 dice for under $25, and they're large 13 mil dice.
No, they're 16s. They're big boys.
Are they 16 mils? Yeah.
Yeah, same as order dice from Bolt Action.
Yeah, because they fit on my order dice trackers for my units. But they are incredible, highly rate. There was a while where I thought I wasn't going to be able to take my CanCon, my Soviet dice to CanCon. I'd have to take some of my other Dice of War dice because they were rolling obscenely well, to the point I was quite concerned that they were rigged.
Have they settled down, have they?
Yeah, they shafted me last night.
Good.
Yeah,
dice...
Lots of ones, lots of twos.
You've got a shafting coming, that's for sure.
Yeah. I played about 4 games where they just would not go wrong, and then like the last 2 weeks they've been either average or terrible, just nothing hitting. And I was like, they're my favorite. They're my first set, and I was like, I don't know whether I should take these dice.
I knew
they seem to be rolling way too well, and I've heard everyone else had said like, no, Dice of War dice are good. They're balanced. They're really nice. Like they're not actually like I was rolling these dice going, these are nuts.
Yeah.
And then they put me up the creek, and I was like, cool. No, I don't feel bad taking these to CanCon now.
I knew you were safe because at one of the big narrative games we played, every time I wanted to roll good, because those dice were rolling pretty hot against me.
Yeah, because you have a stack of them, don't you?
I've got a stack of other ones, but I was picking up some of yours. I picked up some of your Russian dice, and every time I rolled one, I rolled a 1 or a 2.
Yes.
So I knew it wasn't the dice. I knew there was just something.
It's just the Jackson magic.
It's just the Jackson magic for a few games.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've got a few sets. I took advantage of his sale. I've done it twice now, actually. I've got sets for my British armies, and then a couple sets for my German armies as well. So. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And the other big cool bit is he's a WA boy.
Yeah.
So he's up north, I think. I don't think he lives in Perth.
No, I think he's up north somewhere. I'm not sure what town, but we probably shouldn't say even if we did know.
Yeah, absolutely. None of our business.
But yeah.
But yeah, no, he's a local, so worth supporting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I guess that brings us to the meat and potatoes of why we are actually here tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This little game called Bolt Action.
Yeah, that game we both play a lot of. Hey, John, what do you think of V3?
I quite like V3. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, well, that
Um,
would make two of us.
yeah, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
a bit of a fan of what they've done going into V3. There was a few things leading in that was, it was a bit wait and see how they went, but yeah, I think that's worked out pretty good in the overall.
Yeah, I definitely was mildly concerned going in. I've been a bit of Bolt Faction fanboy for a long time and played a lot of it, and was quite concerned going in, and then it dropped, and I don't think it's the game for everyone. We've certainly seen, and we'll get into this later, I think, a bit of a shift in who's playing it. Just that normal edition change, community turnover. But no,
Yeah,
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. What's
yeah.
your favourite thing about it? Now that we're a year and a, I think we're a year and a third in. We're like 16 months into
My
Bolt Action V3.
Yeah, sounds about right. My absolute favourite thing is the platoon structure. And there's going to be people out there who disagree, but I really like that they've opened up the floor. Like, obviously, you've still got your mandatory rifle squad, rifle platoon, two squads, one guy, one officer. It's like screams old editions of a certain sci-fi game.
Which shall not be named.
Yeah, because we both play it sometimes, but we won't admit it. Yeah, it's great. The platoon structure, having that fundamental rifle platoon, keeps it that sort of rifle infantry game, I think. But there's just so many options you can do. And one of the things that I really like is that they've kind of got rid of that one ultimate unit per slot, particularly when it comes to vehicles or artillery or...
Yeah, that British list that you always saw one.
Yeah, or even just
pounder
like that optimal tank. There was always like the Dakar, or there was the Dakar Stuart, or the Dakar Panzer, or there's a few other tanks that you'd see regularly because no medium tank could beat their points to reward ratio. So yeah, I think by forcing you to take two tanks for the armored platoon, I think you've really changed that, mixed that up. But you've also opened up the floor to someone going, you know what, I am going to park 3 anti-tank guns on the table, stationary anti-tank guns on the table. Bring your tank, see how it goes.
Yeah. No,
not that it's the ultimate counter, but I think it's just got rid of that ultimate counter sort of thing. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a few that are still very much the ultimate counter, but at least in Australia and especially in WA, like I'd see a lot of people where it's like, I'm not actually going to take 2 of the same thing or 3 of the same thing because there is so much different stuff that you can fit into an army that you actually need to have some different bits and pieces within your platoons to solve the various problems.
Particularly if you're playing competitive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In the narrative stuff, there's a lot more of, like, when we've played a couple of narrative games, it's been like, cool, I am running a couple of rifle platoons and I'm going to have 8 identical squads.
Yeah, that's right.
Or I'm running an armor platoon, and guess what? T-3485s came in platoons of 3, so guess what my armor platoon is? It's 3 T-30.
I rocked up to a tournament with 3 Cromwells and a Firefly.
And you were not at all unhappy about that.
I quite liked it. I didn't do well, but I quite enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The only platoon that probably it is a little bit solved is the artillery platoon, but we can get into that later.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, probably my favourite thing out of that shift to V3, it's just how much it's freshened up the game.
Yeah.
And in particular, how with some of the other changes in effect, every single part of the table feels played on.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's with, and we'll get into it later, with the changes to cover saves, with the changes to shooting and movement and missions. You're playing games across an entire table. Your units from one end of the table to the other can interact, which is why we've seen, for example, the light machine gun increase in usefulness and value.
Yeah.
Not so much that it got cheaper. Yeah, it got cheaper, but 5 points, whatever, whoop-de-doo. But the fact that you can actually consistently hit stuff and pin stuff means that having the capacity to reach out and touch somebody with a 36-inch light machine gun in the squad is actually genuinely valuable, especially when there's a lot of small teams kicking around like there is currently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so no, I've been pretty impressed with that. The missions, and especially when you combine what Warlord's given us with also what the community have got, there's a lot of stuff that rewards movement, infiltrators, which again we're probably going to get into later. You're actually interacting with the table from turn 1 because you've got units up forwards, and especially now they've started to rein them in a little bit so that they're smaller squads, so they're actually killable. I was playing Soviet Scouts for a while, and that unit was busted.
Yeah. Yeah.
now they're reining it into 3, 4, 5-man teams that actually do die quite consistently. Yeah, there's a lot of interaction across the table that I'm really enjoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll add that my very close runner-up is that they've reduced the number of times you get Super Sixes.
Yeah, you need to be working for it to get those now.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the Hollywood philosophy, the whole movie moment kind of, that one lucky shot sort of thing behind them, but having a few times run inexperienced rifleman and just always being on 7s to hit, just, you take a pin, you're on 7s. You move, you're on 7s.
Yeah.
It was just, long range, you're on 7s. Long range isn't a thing anymore. I quite like that too, but not my favourite.
Yeah, it's nice not to be having to measure every second thing.
Yeah, exactly. So
no, that's fair. Now, going into V3, obviously, you mentioned you were a little bit cautious, and I was definitely as well. What kind of pre-V3 concerns, predictions, kind of concepts looking at the rules as they came out? What were those turned out to not come to fruition or do come to what did come to fruition in that regard?
The big one I remember is there was a bit of talk around the game getting slower because of the cover saves.
Yep.
Which I think was a valid concern because a game of bolt action isn't a 5-minute thing, which is, it would be silly if it was 5 minutes, but if it doubled the length of the game, I can see that being an issue. But it didn't happen. I think that the simplification of the to-hit mechanics really helped speed up the game. The fact that, or at least when I'm playing, when my opponent's shooting me, I'm already calculating my cover saves as I go. So I'm sort of calculating my cover saves while they're shooting me, being ready to see what I need. So I think that sort of taking some of the mental load off the shooter and putting it onto the shootee sort of helps keep that speed. It's an extra dice roll. I think it's an extra dice roll. It works out to be an extra dice roll, doesn't it? Yeah.
Unless you are having to hit it on impossible shots for the 6s and 6s, in which case it's the same number of dice rolls.
Yeah. But yeah, apart from the other side of that is that I think it keeps you a little bit more engaged. Bolt action's already quite an engaged game because it's draw the dice out of the bag. It's not you go, I go. But I think that the cover saves help just bring you a little bit more into that involvement of the game. You're paying a little bit more attention when you're being shot at, which is great until I start chatting on a club night.
Yeah, well. Yes, that does happen. Yeah. No, my big concern going in was the platoon structure.
Yeah.
I was concerned that we were going to see a list archetype dominate. I was concerned that we were going to see artillery pieces become egregiously powerful because you could take stacks of them. And keep in mind, in V2 and V1, 2 or 3 artillery pieces was an absolute nightmare to deal with.
Especially you put mediums or heavies on the table, and the pins you were putting out with them was brutal.
Yeah, and combined though with the changes to indirect, the points increase, they've really gone away, which is actually disappointing. I think they overcorrected that. We can, again, get into that later. But that was kind of my thing as I was looking at it going, this is just going to turn into a shooting gallery. The cover saves aren't going to do diddly squat keeping things alive. We're all just going to get shot to bits with HE, and the game is going to die because, gun lines everywhere.
Yeah, gun lines, yeah. I think,
and guess what? That's not a thing.
We sort of saw some of that. We had a tournament runner for a couple of years where it was a team tournament, and this was in V2, one player took infantry, one player took armoured, and one player took artillery. Yeah,
and they were home-cooked platoons.
It was a home-cooked artillery
capacity.
platoon, at least. The others were the standard reinforced platoon, basically, and the other one was sort of the standard tank platoon from Tank Wars or whatever it was. Yeah. So the artillery platoon was homebrewed, and they proved to be quite strong.
That was an understatement. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were very strong.
So I suppose having seen some artillery platoons written as artillery platoons, that's probably what fed some of that as well.
Yeah, and I'd remembered a lot of the really good theatre selectors in V2 allowed you multiple artillery pieces. And it was definitely because artillery was the cheapest way to pack a lot of punch on the table. My Hungarians used to regularly, leverage that extra slot from extra access support, and them and Romanians used to be a nightmare to play against because you were just walking into gunfire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was almost like if you could take a HE, as in if you could take a howitzer on a tank, you took the howitzer on a tank.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like there's a couple of things that have kind of really neutered the gun line. I mean, I would say that our community hasn't really increased the amount of terrain on its tables, so that really isn't a factor for us. However, obviously, some of the points shuffles they did, increasing howitzers and decreasing autocannons, have meant that while an autocannon is phenomenal, it's okay. The artillery pieces really are quite naff.
Yeah.
They're okay, sort of.
I think there's certain artillery pieces.
Missions as well have prevented that, because obviously the book missions for bolt action, 4 out of 6 games, if you're randomizing it, you should be either using a meeting engagement where you walk onto the table, which means you lose your artillery piece for a turn minimum, setting up, or fog of war, in which case, unless it's on a turntable, good luck keeping it alive.
Yeah, fog of war's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, and then obviously, the emphasis for mobility in V3. V3 is an extremely mobile game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's definitely been a factor, which I'm glad that we don't have a shooting gun line. Whether that's something that needs changing down the track or rebalancing it for a V4. Yes, I said it, V4.
Whoa.
Is something we can worry about later, but for the most part, I'm glad we don't have gun lines, and that was what I was concerned about going in.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the other big change that certain parts of the community have been very vocal about, particularly competitive scene? Close quarters. What were your thoughts?
Close quarters. I don't hate what they've done.
I thought it was quite an elegant change, just moving it from being go first or simultaneous to go simultaneous or go last.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I necessarily love it, but I also did play a fairly assault-heavy commando army towards the end of V2.
Which also, let's be real, wasn't the best assault army.
It wasn't the best assault army, but it was pretty good. And just once, it did hold its own against a full Japanese spearman army. I had one guy left on the table at the end. One solo commando left, but there was no spearman left. That was not bad, given there was 120 of them on the table to start with.
And what?
Yeah,
40 commandos?
Yeah, something like that. It wasn't many. He did outnumber me something like 3-1. So, yeah. But the change is elegant with the attack order. I also think that V2 assaults were too powerful, given the history of what the game's meant to represent. We're not playing space elves and space humans. It's World War II, where close combat was a last-ditch effort just to survive or to take that last position or whatever. Yes, there was plenty of heroic close combat moments in World War II, but they weren't you weren't getting up and running into the trenches.
No, 100%. No, 100%. Yeah, look, Australia, especially in the western side, I can't speak as much for the eastern states. Assault was never the all-encompassing solution to problems that it was. Like, it was around, but building armies around assault wasn't definitely wasn't a thing in Australia. As opposed to Europe. So
or in WA anyway.
Yeah. Look, I'd even say Australia. When we went to, I noticed it last year going to WTC, where we just were like, cool, that's changed. And most of the other teams, at least the ones who were being vocal on the internet, you were hearing lots of, I completely need to change how I understand the game. Not having to make that change for us, I think, was an advantage, because it just wasn't as much of a thing. I think it's much better in terms of the historical realism. I actually think it's a change for realism in bolt action, which is great.
Yep.
The other thing I actually really like about it, and this is going to sound really stupid, is some of the rules around it, specifically Tough Fighter, changed. And I actually think it's better in the sense that it's more consistent.
I agree, yeah. It's way more consistent.
Old assaults, if you were going to go into an assault, there was always that slight chance that something could go pear-shaped unless you had really, really tooled up for assault.
There's always that one time your dice would forsake you.
Yeah, 100%.
When you needed them to not, yeah.
Exactly. Everyone has that story from V1 or V2 where the single guy or the 2 officers with the submachine guns end up, killing 4 guys out of a unit that charges them. after that unit fails to cause any damage or kills only 3 guys, like only kills 2 guys or something,
Or
there's
if
a couple of
you're
men versus the full strength squad.
Or if you're Jono, you see a spotter at about 11 inches and you think, I'm going to assault him and get my consolidation move as well. So you assault him and you fail to kill said spotter, and spotter kills one of your 10 commandos in the squad, and your commandos die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And like that can still happen, but like with tough fighters now, like if you go in and you have tough fighters or even a couple of tough fighters,
Yeah.
the consistency of knowing that, you know what, I've got 2 tough fighters and a squad of 9 guys. I should be, and I'm attacking a squad of vets. Cool, my tough fighters, I should be getting at least 1 kill out of those 2, and then at least 2 kills out of the rest of the squad.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'm guaranteed to get mathematically 3 kills, maybe 4, but probably 3 kills. Whereas, you know, there's always that chance it doesn't go off as well with something else. Yeah, so that consistency is, I think, actually a massive improvement in that you know what's going to happen. You're probably going to take, you know how many casualties you probably are going to take. Yeah.
Yeah.
In a way you didn't quite know. But yeah. No, it definitely hasn't been a world-altering change here. There's chatter, obviously, with the new Japanese book coming out. A lot of the competitive circles and a lot of the competitive podcasts going, oh, Assault's back. We'll see.
We'll see.
Tough Fighters and Fanatics is an amazing combo on the Japanese.
Yeah.
But we will see. I mean,
the 3 Fanatics on the Japanese is an amazing combo.
And it always has been.
Yeah.
And
that
it really
hasn't
is the thing that gives them the flavour of the list.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's the thing that gives them their identity. So no, we'll see. But yeah,
the other comment I'll make
about...
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, the other comment I'll make about close quarters is it's made it a bit... I feel like it's made it a bit more tactical.
Yeah.
You've got to think about it a little bit more. You've got to go, that squad is in a defensive position. I need to whittle them down a couple rounds of shooting, whether that be with the squad who's going to assault them or another squad nearby, whatever. Try and take a couple guys out of the squad with shooting before you assault, or you have to go, right, this is like turn 7, I've got to take this objective to win the game. I have to assault them and beat them.
Absolutely.
So you go for it. So I think that it's given you like that sort of thought process where you got to think about it a little bit more, not just that I'm just going to run an assault. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that instantly, like any change to a game that forces you to actually have to think through your decision making more, and for you to then be rewarded for having to put that thought in, is a good thing.
Yeah, you got to set it up a bit more. If you're going to use it as an aggressive move, you got to sort of set it up. So.
And I think you can still use it, like really effectively, you know, to bounce that unit that couple of extra inches off a consolidate, or to, you know, clear that last stubborn couple of guys out of that piece of cover that you know it's going to take you too long to shoot them out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely place for it in your tactics. It's just it's a I'm going to use this once or twice in every couple of games instead of I'm going to use this, you know, 3 or 4 times every game.
Yeah.
Not that, again, in Australia, that was a particularly common tactic to only do that.
Yeah.
What we've obviously seen 4 books out. We've got the 5th one coming.
Imminently coming, yep.
Imminently coming with the Japanese, and that will seal the big 5 combatants of World War II.
Yep.
What of the army books? What are your thoughts on the army books?
Overall, I think they've been quite good. There's going to be a lot of people out there who think that 1 or 2 of the books aren't, and I kind of agree. There's a couple. I think the Americans, I don't play Americans, but I've spoken to quite a few people who do, and they all felt not disappointed necessarily, not annoyed at the book, but more maybe like disappointed, more like it had the potential to be good, and it was just kind of good, not great sort of thing. So just potentially some flavor potential that wasn't put in.
Yeah, and that's definitely, like, I would say the American book in particular probably is the one that stood out, and it's become like a lot of the old Minor Nation lists were, in that you look and you go, there's not a huge lot that is special in the national rules, particularly the national rules, that makes me really want to build this list. At the same time, like, it has like a lot of the quote-unquote amazing transports and vehicles that you get through Lend-Lease on the Allied side are fundamentally American units.
Yes, yeah.
But again, obviously, then they're not exclusively American. So it's not a perk because you can only get them in an American list. It's just, they're really good. Like, I think you can build a really solid list out of the Yank book But yeah, I think you're
think
right. The theme misses, particularly probably the big one that jumped out at me was the fact that both paratroopers and Marines get stubborn.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah, I think that's jumped out to everyone. I think that's sort of the overwhelming opinion about the American book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some really funky units in it though. But yeah, no, I would agree that it wasn't the best quality book in that you can build a playable army out of it, but it just kind of feels a little bit.
Yeah, I think my overwhelming criticism, and it's not that overwhelming, I suppose, but my one criticism, and this sort of goes across all the books because it doesn't pick out one in particular, is that there's a number of army special rules which have intended to do one thing but not done it, or done the opposite, or not quite hit the mark. I'm thinking the combo there of Marines versus Paras. The British officer rule, I feel like it does that, and I'll harp on about that forever if you let me. The other one is... Oh, it's blanked. No, it's gone now. I'm sure there was another one I was thinking of as well. But there's a few rules here and there which I think have just missed the mark. I'll put it in text if I remember when I edit that.
Yeah, and they're not like with the British one, it's not exactly a bad rule to have a +1.
No,
the detriment of neg 1 cover save. But when your rule caption and your theme text is it's leading from the front, and it incentivizes you to dump him in a transport and keep him at the back. Yeah,
it's achieving the exact opposite. Yeah. Which, it's like I said, it's not a bad rule, and I understand the negative because it's quite a big positive. And having now played it enough, I was a bit salty when the book was announced and I saw that, but having now played it a lot, that +3 is actually super useful.
Yeah,
to your morale.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm noticing with the books is that we're getting this interesting thing where, especially, and it's probably really noticeable with the Japanese book, we're getting this really interesting cross-pollination where different units have things that would traditionally have only been in one book.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the classic example, I think, straight up off the top of my head, is that scouts in the Soviet list on full-size squads got Rangers lead the way. Now, they fundamentally perform a very different job in a list to Rangers because you can't put it on small teams, and B, scouts can't have any of the long-range fire. So without having played a lot of Yanks, it kind of feels like your Yanks can take, like the Rangers can take the LMGs and the BARs, and actually becomes a really good take and hold midfield squad, whereas the scouts feel more like a bit of a cruise missile that you dump all your submachine guns in and run at someone. The other one we're seeing with the Japanese book is that while Brits can get guards on regular and veteran units and on quite a broad cross-section of the book, the Japanese SNLF can really only get it on the veterans. And
on the...
fundamentally changes how you use that, because obviously, do you want to pay that extra point on that expensive veteran body, or are you better off taking lots of squads that can't be pinned?
Yeah.
And I expect that's something we're going to see over the books, is that we'll see different ideas played with across books, and hopefully we won't end up in a situation where a stack of the army lists, like in V2, especially with the miners, are cookie-cutter national rules with very similar unit entries.
I like that there's a level of consistency in the rules, like as in...
This is also Warlord games. Let's note that consistency isn't necessarily always the strong suit.
Yeah. But like Rangers Lead the Way is called Rangers Lead the Way, and the Scout rule, I believe, is called Scouts Lead the Way. So they've got this, and the rule text is the same. So like they are, when they're duplicating rules, they are keeping them the same, which I think is nice.
Yeah, except for flags, interesting. It's Japanese.
Yeah, okay.
It's 5 points more for a Japanese flag, but it also protects you from rookie pilots.
Yes. So it gives it extra functionality as well.
Extra functionality, not so much different text. The other thing is, and it was really egregious with the German book, the typos were shocking.
Yeah, I would love to see a 3.1 come out for the German book, particularly the typo where they called I don't know what the static field gun was, I can't remember, but they called it a Stug, or it was a Stug and they called it a static field gun. Or whatever.
That was the main rule book.
Oh, that was the main rule book, was it?
It was a 37mm AT gun, I think, that they called a Stug.
There was definitely some interesting typos in the rule book and the German book. But I think overall the German book's quite strong. I don't think there's any book that is a crazy power creep yet. We'll see.
We'll see. I think that's probably something to talk about going forward, because we're finally moving into unknown territory.
Yeah.
And the armies that were really fleshed out are now kind of similar to how they were, but slightly different. And we're going to be moving into books going forward that weren't as fleshed out, or which had lots of different variations of rules across V2 and V1, French and Italians, where we'll actually see them doing some experimenting, and we'll see whether that turns into creep or not.
I think the book that risks creep the most is the Commonwealth book. Just with unit combinations. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle the unit combinations or nation combinations. And do they do like a special rule table like what they've done for all the other books, where you have all your generic officers and weapons teams and that, and then you give them their nationality as a special rule, or whether they break it up into completely separate lists, or like, we're not privy to any of this. We haven't seen any pre-release stuff. So from my standpoint, I think that's the one that risks power creep, or whatever you want to call it, the most. The next book is the Italians, isn't it?
Yes, and that's been confirmed to have 3 lists in it. Alessio actually said that. It's got your pre-armistice Italians up to 43, and then you have post-armistice collaborators, and then post-armistice liberators.
So it's really, and that'll be an ally or Axis book in that case, right?
In that case, yeah. And I suspect we'll probably see something similar with French.
Yeah, so that'll be cool. But I don't think you risk the comboing, the way that you saw.
I expect we'll see lists actually get toned down, because there's a lot of the vehicles in the Italian book won't be playable in all of the lists. And like the staple unit that you see people playing with Italians both for fun and competitively is the Folgore paratroopers, particularly because they can take lots of submachine guns and lots of Panzerfausts. And if that's something you're leaning on for your anti-tank, and you suddenly can only take it if you're playing, I think it's RSI are the collaborators, then that's going to change how that works. How have you found that the theming has gone in each of the books in terms of building narrative, interesting historical forces?
I'm not going to lie, I've really only spent time with the British book because it's what I have. I've dabbled with the German stuff a little bit, but that's a back burner project at the moment for me. But I really like the British book for theming. I think there's a lot in there. I started dabbling and using guards a lot more to represent my desert experience troops coming into D-Day.
Yep.
Which, that's only a recent thing. I sort of was like, I could do this, and it works narratively in my head, because some of us have huge OCD about things. So yeah, I quite like the theming, the options. The commando is the same. Going into the release of, V3, one of the things that I was a little bit worried about was that I would lose my Royal Marine Commandos, because I had been playing them using a theatre list at every chance I had, because the theatre list was awesome.
Yep, and it really let you build that themey list.
Really let me build that themey list, really let me lean into, special forces coming in off the beach and doing their thing. So yeah, that was a bit of a thing. So now that, the V3 book's out, you can really lean into that still. Almost more, because you can give, more than you could in the V2 book for Britain, but it's about the same as what you could with the theatre list, because you can give them the medium machine guns, the mortars, everything can be commandos.
Yep.
So, yeah.
No, absolutely. I've really loved it. I've experimented a little bit with, I think I've played at least 2 or 3 games with every one of the books out so far, with the exception of the US. I've got 2 games in with Brits, a couple of games in with Germans, and stacks with Soviets, because that's the army I have.
That's your main.
Fleshed out.
Yeah.
It's not my main, it's my most fleshed out. Don't laugh. But yeah.
Try not to, but I can't help it. It's your main. It's your main.
I'm going to continue
not your
to
first
live under
love.
the rock.
It's
not my first love. But yeah, no, I've played it. There's a lot to do with theme there. I do like, the one minor frustration I have is that you can give units the elite unit special rules. So for example, you can take like just one random team weapon as Fallschirmjäger in a German list and have no other Fallschirmjäger in the list. I kind of wish for theme purposes that you had to take a squad of the same troops, but that just means that that's how I play it when I'm running themey lists rather than competitive stuff.
I suppose that then puts the onus back on you, a bit like what we're talking about with the
to be a decent human
Baron's
being.
War. Well, yeah, okay, let's say that. But also, just if you're going to play narrative, you need to lean into the narrative.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're going to play competitive, obviously all that sort of narrative stuff
that goes out the window, and that's perfectly fine.
It's your game. Play it however you want. If you want to go play competitively and play it narrative and competitive, do it. And
exactly.
Excellent. do that
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
But if you also want to build that really fine-tuned list and start looking at doing the CanCons of the world and looking at WTC and all that
You need to be
different.
leveraging everything you can get.
Exactly, because your opponent's going to be leveraging everything they can get. So you're putting yourself at a disadvantage doing that. Or
And
not doing that, sorry.
So, for competitive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But for
Especially
narrative and for casual, load up on the theme.
Yeah, exactly. Load up on that.
Which
theme.
I like that V3 does give us that option.
Yeah.
I will say I'm a bit disappointed that we haven't seen stuff that's not Special Forces get much of the V3 layer stuff onto it. I would have loved to see Volkssturm or Volksgrenadiers or Panzergrenadiers be an option in a German list so you could give team weapons that rule. It would have been cool to see, Home Guard in a British list or Partisans.
As in, like an extra themey sort of.
As an extra themey thing.
Yeah.
No, and some of those, all that is giving them your inexperienced units green.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would have been cool to see them branch out a little bit more. They seem to be doing that with the Japanese book.
Yeah.
And I think playing that home defense of Okinawa themed list will be amazing. As much as your units randomly doing stuff you don't want them to do is an experience.
Yeah.
They've really stepped that up. That theming is amazing.
I mean, that's basically the old inexperienced SS special rule.
And in the SS, this is actually the other exception, is the SS, if you take them inexperienced in the German book, do get the same rule.
Yeah.
And that's something I do want to play in experience, because I haven't gotten around to it yet. Because that sounds like it'd be amazing fun to play.
I played against a list in V2.
Luke's
Again,
list?
a bit different. Yeah.
With the 12th SS one from the theatre selector? Yeah.
He just laughed at me every turn, basically, because he went, I'm going to assault you. Oh no, I failed my order test. Guess what? I'm going to assault you.
Assault you, yeah.
So, yeah. It's not
that was also, that was one of those that was also the V2 thoughtless, it doesn't matter, I'm going to assault you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not the same now, but
no.
It wasn't, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
So, moving on from that question, Jackson.
Yeah.
Which platoons do you like? I think we sort of briefly touched on this.
Ooh, okay. So the ones that are obvious picks, both from a theme perspective because they look cool on the table and because they add a lot to an army if you're being a little bit more crunchy, is I love how much you can fit in a rifle platoon.
Yes.
I love, the armor platoon is really cool. And obviously the heavy weapons platoon is just super flexible. I really like, and I haven't got a stack of games with it in it, is the Recce platoon. I think that is seriously underrated.
I also think that if you can take horses or super mobile infantry like motorbikes or whatever, I don't know, motorbikes aren't necessarily the best points cost, blah, 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 but
they're fun.
I think that's where the Recce platoons probably really stand up as well.
Yeah, and that's something, and it's one of those things, if I see a Recce platoon across the table from me, I'm 95% sure that player is an incredibly phenomenal player, because it's that pick that it's something I would say you can clearly identify that someone knows their stuff, because it is so rewarding to play. And you can build some really themey forces. You can go, cool, guess what? I want to take an armor platoon, but you know what? I want to build a Panzergrenadier platoon. Or a Panzer platoon of skirmishing, transports and scouts. And guess what? It all goes into these Recce transports and you can have this fabulous time with it. And when I get back around to doing some more with my Germans, that is actually the direction I'm going to take it in, is probably lean into the Recce platoon a little bit and run it with soft skins and stuff. I really love the Recce platoon.
That's the thought I sort of had around my Germans was I'm building my tanks as Panzerlehr in Normandy, and I've got Panzer Grenadiers to go with them. And I mean, whether I run them as Recce or in a rifle platoon, either way, but they'll be mounted, so a Recce platoon makes sense to have them in the 250s. So yeah, that's kind of what my thought was around the Recce platoon, was that would make it quite a good fit. And then, points willing with everything else in the game or whatever, I've got 7/16 themed static division as my regular infantry, so that's your rifle platoon. That was kind of where my head was leading with my German project.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at some of the units in Hungary and Budapest, which were mounted up in trucks and used as kind of a mobile reserve, or some of the units used in Operation Spring Awakening, as the forward scouts and stuff. I have a couple of one of the things we've seen in V3 is that they repointed armored transports, and that was kind of the biggest change to an armored transport, is that it is cheap enough that you can really fit it into a list.
I don't think I ever ran an armored transport in V2
because they were just super expensive.
Yeah, I almost don't leave home without them now.
People can say that soft skins are dead because they die so much easier. I'm actually not convinced that they do. I mean, they still die to the fluky shots that would have killed them anyway. But the big change is that obviously your armored transports just got so much cheaper.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing a lot of that. But I'm actually really, like, I've played a few games with the soft skins as well, and they're incredible, especially when you shove them in a recce platoon.
Yeah.
Because you just can't pin them down. You can't, you know, they're still super mobile. And, you know, if it's only a cruise missile to get a unit up the table, they're great. And also, you know, how many units actually had armored transports? Not that many. More so if you're playing Americans or Brits, but like the Soviets didn't have a lot of them. The Germans didn't have anywhere near as much as the propaganda portrayed.
The Brits really didn't have them until later on anyway, where the kangaroos started becoming real prevalent.
Yeah.
And then it become a huge part of the tactics. But yeah.
See, I always think of the kangaroo as that quintessential Italian theatre kind of unit.
Yeah.
More so even than, you know, Northwest Europe. You know, in my brain, my brain defaults to dudes in half tracks for Northwest Europe and kangaroos for, you know, it's Italy. And I know that that's not at all how they were used, but
no,
you know, there's just something in my head there. Yeah,
having just read through a book following the Brits through Normandy, that was a huge part of their tactics later in the war.
Yeah, okay.
Like 45, it was.
Yeah.
And that's when the Brits started getting them a lot more.
Yeah. See, yeah, I don't know why my head just associated with it, because I know that is not how they operate, but my brain just automatically thinks Italian theatre and then thinks kangaroos of some kind.
So we've talked about, we like the rifle platoons because they're big and they actually look like a platoon.
Yes.
We like the armoured platoon because tanks are cool.
And you'd see armoured platoons even if they were crap, because people like tanks.
Tanks, tanks are cool. Tanks. Recce platoon because they have a lot of versatility. We sort of briefly talked about artillery platoons earlier, in that some of the point changes and stuff have hurt artillery a little bit more.
And made the decisions you'd make in an artillery platoon a little bit more obvious.
Yeah.
One-dimensional.
Yeah, what do you think when you see an artillery platoon on the table, though?
It depends on the table, or if I'm playing Italians. And I say that because a good friend of ours has a habit of leveraging the Italian deploy an ambush rule with some really light guns, and they're super lethal.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I don't mind seeing an artillery platoon on the table. I'm a little bit cautious of it because you do need to respect it. They do, like, regardless of what you put in them, they do put out a lot of fire. But yeah, I do think, you know, there's a difference between one armed with flak guns and multi-launchers and one armed with, you know, AT guns. I like that AT guns actually feel like a viable choice. They'd be way better, obviously, if your autocannons weren't so cheap. That's a decision. I don't know why that was the case, but they'd be really good. They're really good regardless. I like that change. I'm a bit disappointed that they nerfed artillery so much. Yeah, it's warranted in some regards, but I'm just not excited in playing it.
Yeah, fair. The fact that anti-tank guns are a viable choice, or a much more viable choice now than they were in V2, combined with the cheapness of a 17-pounder, really makes me excited, because I can actually see myself. I haven't done it too much, but I can see myself putting that 17-pounder on the table.
Absolutely.
And in V2, it was a unit that you took because the few times I took it was because I literally didn't have any other models, and it just never performed.
Yeah.
Whereas the few times I have put it on the table in V3, it shuts down the table on one side, or you basically just point it across the table, and no one is putting a tank in that alley.
Absolutely, which has its value.
Yeah.
It just also feel a little bit disappointing when, because of the way that deployment works or the way that units are moving across the table, that it has nothing to shoot at because everything's hiding from it. But it is definitely, like, particularly anti-tank guns feel substantially better than they were. Yeah. What are your thoughts then, if we're talking about this, on engineer platoons?
I don't know that I've had a lot of thoughts on engineer platoons. First reason is I have one squad of engineers. Well, I mean, obviously I can use any rifle squad as an engineer squad, but I've got one flamethrower built and painted.
And really, you're taking engineers for the flamethrower. Yeah,
exactly. So I need to pick up my act at some point and paint my second flamethrower up. I probably need to build a second one for my commandos. Engineer platoon, I think, is an interesting one. The extra point per man for a rule which I don't think you're really ever going to use the assaulting buildings. Look, it's V3. You're still getting smashed if you're in a building with HE. Like, if I see someone on the side of the table who's got like a couple of 1-inch template HEs, I'm not putting myself in a building. If they've got a 2 or a 3-inch, I'm definitely not putting myself in a building.
The fact that you don't get a cover save inside a building if it's hit by HE is just, yeah.
Yeah, and that's whether it's direct or indirect.
Yeah, I wish that was something that had been changed, but
yeah,
they're worse than they were last edition. I don't think they were as bad as everyone made out last edition, unless you had already activated and couldn't go down. If you could go down so you never got hit, they were playable.
Yeah, so that 1 point per model, I feel like it's a bit rough for taking them. But then
it's great in a narrative game when you need to clear minefields or do something that actually encourages you to interact with that rule.
Yeah, I think that the engineer platoon is a narrative platoon, unless you have a plan. I think if you've got a plan with what you want to do with them, and also the Japanese book is coming out, and you can take a tank in there, I believe. I heard rumor.
The German list can already do that.
The German list can do that, right?
Yeah, so you can take Goliath teams, various dug-in pillbox tank stuff as non-mandatory units in a German list, just like you'll be able to do with the Japanese list.
Yeah, and I believe the Japanese one has a little flamethrower tank you can put in there as a non-compulsory unit.
Yeah, which is cool.
Which is cool.
Yeah, I think it probably is a case of it's like the Recce platoon. When you see someone who's put it on the table, you know they've got a plan, and that they're probably skilled enough to execute on that plan.
Or they've gone, I love flamethrowers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And flamethrowers are still scary. They're
horrendously scary. They're inconsistent,
still scary.
But they're horrendously scary.
Yeah. So.
Everyone saying that flamethrowers is dead, which was definitely a thing when V3 came out, I think has been proven wrong. Like, I don't know that they're amazing, but they're definitely not terrible. And that's exactly where they should be.
Yeah. Fire still hurts. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the engineer platoon. What about
that's
you?
fair. Yeah, look, I think, as I said, if you see someone who very clearly has it in their list, they probably have a plan with it. It's noticeable that it is probably a bit of a better pick for the armies that have regular engineers.
Yeah.
Or funky, weird things you can slot in around it. It's definitely a good option, but it's not an auto-include.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Our next thing to talk about was cover saves. I think we've probably talked about cover saves enough.
Yeah, I think we have. I don't know that we need to really go on about that. I think it's been a good change. I know players who've been disappointed in it, so that it took away some of the tactical decision-making. I still think it still has a lot of tactical decision-making. It's way easier to bring new players in.
I think so, yeah.
Which, again, we'll get onto that.
I think there was a lot of scare of the big red and yellow beast being a bit too close.
Yeah, a little bit of GWification.
Yeah, but I think that the overall cover saves good change.
Yeah, they've worked. And I like that. I think we mentioned it earlier. I really have been impressed with the fact that 1 or 2 man team, like small teams, are no longer unkillable.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how often you will fail that 2-up save.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just ask my Terminators how they used to always fail their 2-up saves.
Yeah. And also, it gives Indirect and Flamethrowers a really unique and important position in a list. So, it gives them a really unique job, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I think it works for the theme and everything. That's gone pretty well. What are any obvious misses for V3 so far?
I appreciate your note here, Jackson. Not the fact that British officers take a -1 to their cover save. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I figured I would try and call you out to silence you, but we've already had that conversation, so look how that went.
I don't know. I don't think there's anything I can name off the top of my head. I don't think bolt action is the perfect game. I don't think there is such thing as the perfect game, mostly because you've got to please more than the person who wrote the game.
Yes.
And the bolt action community around the world is large.
Yes.
And we here speak English, and there is a large percentage of the bolt action players in the world that don't, so we don't necessarily see a lot of content from them.
Yeah, Spain is the one that really jumps out in that regard.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So, the perfect game, it is not. I think it's pretty good, though. I don't think there's nothing that really stands out from the rules that really screams out that this was too complicated or I really wish they had done it this way. I ran a friend through their first time game last night and they enjoyed it, and they haven't played war games for 20 years. So, to be able to sit down and play a game which is as complicated as Bolt Action, because let's face it, most tabletop war games are fairly in-depth. Like, his one comment was, that's a lot of numbers. And it was
less than V2.
Oh yeah, less than V2, but as a first-time player, he was like, it's a lot of things to remember. I'm like, yeah, but it comes to you as you play it. He's like, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I think to be able to sit down and play for a few hours, and he started to grasp it towards the end. That was quite good,
Yep. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I would say that there's a few little interesting design philosophy things that I was kind of a bit disappointed in. So I was a little bit disappointed that we had things when the game came out. We had the multi-launcher saga where it changed multiple times via FAQs.
Yes, yeah.
We had there was a very clear, I would say, element of fixing what was broken in V2. And in hindsight, some of it was fairly busted. I think in the moment, it felt balanced enough, especially here in WA, because we have a community where you're encouraged to not dial things up to 11. You're encouraged to explore every aspect of the game, because otherwise we wouldn't have a community.
Yeah, it's personal.
So we didn't see a lot of it, but there was definitely stuff there that needed fixing. However, there was also stuff there in V2 that needed improvement and really hasn't improved. The standout one is, why are motorcycles still 5 points a man?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
AT grenades,
Agreed.
They kind of feel a little naff, and they possibly could have been tinkered with. Yeah, there seems to have been a focus on...
need to be 1.5 point per man.
Yeah. And it's just one of those, or like a static upgrade that they cost X amount points on the unit.
Yeah,
rather than per man. Yeah, look, there was definitely a design philosophy of focusing on what needed to be rebalanced to tone the game down and bring everything a little bit more into the middle of the bell curve. And perhaps some stuff at one end of the bell curve didn't get the tinkering with that it needed. Yeah, and that's, those are a couple of pretty niche cases. I was a bit disappointed with the internal balance of units that can go into artillery platoon slots. I've been really, as I said before, I think in this conversation, I've been really impressed with the push for theming and for more balanced armies. If we are going to take a leaf out of the European competitive book, it is, and I know I've said that a lot before in this episode, Australia's scene is super kind of balanced all-round armies that can do a bit of everything. And that's become even more present. The one thing I will say about my CanCon list is it started off with some slight skews in a couple of directions, and it has now wound up being substantially more balanced than I had originally anticipated to go after my various iterations. So yeah, I like that it seems to be, at least in Australia, incentivizing that kind of play. And what I really love, because now we've played 3 of them, or I've played 3 played in 2 and run 1, is it is amazing. Like, it is amazing for the big narrative games. So we regularly here, I run an event with a mutual friend of ours, John Beeson, who, actually, I think he asked for me while we were talking about what to do for the episode. He asked me to call him out as someone who lets his dice shaft him.
Yeah, good. Excellent.
Yeah, so John, consider yourself called out. Play better and don't put yourself in that position. Each year we run a massive 20,000 point, 20-player narrative game that we play on a single large table, and we knock out the entire game in a day. And we get all 6 turns, everything's fully done. It is amazing for building themed forces and playing themed games with narrative armies, with platoon structures that make sense, that allow you to, as the TO, to balance forces against each other and go, cool, where you're actually defending with more anti-tank guns and you're attacking with more armor. So you have access to X, Y, and Z number of platoons, and you have access to Z, Y, and X of another platoon type to create that imbalance and that inconsistency. I've been playing so much competitive since V3 came out in terms of prep for WTC last year, prep for CanCon and WTC this year, that I haven't had a chance to really dig into that. But when I have, I've been really impressed that V3 lets us do that so well. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. One of us put way more thought into that than the other.
Yeah, look, there is that inevitable looking forward to V4 kind of moment that you occasionally hear. But think that's valuable in the sense that it lets you see what the game is doing well. And I have enough of V2 still in my head to see where the game has done better and where some gaps were maybe missed. But yeah, for the most part, it's not the perfect war game, but it's a very good one.
Yeah, agreed. Yep.
Yeah. Where do you think it's going?
Look, I am forever the eternal optimist, unless I'm being
That's
a
a
cynic.
lie. That's a
Yeah,
lie. Every
unless
new
I'm being
army
a
book
cynic.
comes out, dear listeners. Every new army book that comes out,
Bolt action is
the week
ruined.
we the week we get previews, I get a string of messages from Jono going, the game is ruined. It will never be the same again. We need to quit.
The beautiful thing about that is I have my moment of rage, and then it comes out fine. You know, I mean,
And then
there's
I
things
dredge
in
it up for 9 months afterwards.
Yeah, perfect. Exactly as you should. You know, like the Russian book came out and the banners were announced, and I threw my hands up in the air and I said, just give everyone the British special rule. But no, I think, like, I don't really try to predict what's coming because I just don't have any way to actually have any good, like, foresight into that outside of what we see coming out of Warlords games. You know, we don't see anything early, so.
No. Maybe one day, maybe not.
Yeah, whatever.
We want to talk about other games other than Bolt Action on here.
Yeah, at some point. So, you know. Yeah, where is V3 going? I think it's going good places. I hope it continues to go the way it's gone. Like I said before, I haven't seen anything in terms of crazy power creep. It's not like people are running out and selling armies to get the latest books, armies. It seems to be almost a count of everything. I'm sure that if you were to somehow shoehorn in the most fine-tuned unit in every slot, you may be hard to counter, but you know, I think it's going good. It's
wargaming. Yeah,
exactly.
Look, I'm excited. I follow what's happening fairly religiously. I need to get a life. Fanboy here, but
whoop whoop.
You know, yeah. The new Japanese book looks impressive. We're seeing, in terms of theming, we're seeing lots of players jumping up and down going, close combat's back and it's the end of the world good or end of the world bad. We'll wait and see what happens with that. I mean, I've been saying for probably 4 months that I was looking at jumping on Japanese because I've got 30 of them painted up, and if I finished off the army to shift away from Soviets for a while, that'd be great fun. So, you know, and also it's interesting. That was probably the most looked forward to book, or these the most looked forward to book in V3 so far in our community.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I can name at least 4 players who don't play Japanese who have all been talking about for several months that they want to when the book comes out. We've got players who, like, there's 4 or 5 players who have Japanese who are super excited for it coming out, more so than some of the other books that have been out. So, and we're seeing a focus on that theme. Warlord have come out and said that they're going to read. They did it on one of Bo Mortenson's videos recently, that they're going to actually go back through the Get You By PDFs for the non-major nations.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
which I'm super excited about because some of them need a bit of love.
You're hungry for some Hungarians.
Just give me some good infantry options. I love bolt action, but the thing that sells me on a bolt action army is the infantry in it. That's the real flavour. You can add lots of interesting supporting units, but it's the interesting infantry, and they haven't had that since the V3 dropped. But yeah, it's cool to see them giving that a bit of love. We're seeing all the new books come out. We're finally entering unknown territory, and as we were saying before, we're seeing books that either didn't have books or didn't have books that are going to be similar to what will come out, probably. I mean, we've already said about the Italian book that's being split potentially into 3 lists from what Warlord have said, that will be including, I think there was 5 different versions of Italian national rules. Like, there's a lot there. French, obviously there was a stack of different ways to play French.
The Italian book will be a good precursor for what's coming for Commonwealth and French.
Yeah, and I think also what it will do is it will show us whether we're going to get, like, what a book with multiple army lists in it looks like.
Yeah.
Because at some stage we are going to get the really minor nations, and
it's
it will
not
be
worth doing
interesting.
a book each.
Yeah. As much as I love Hungary, it's probably not a book on its own.
Yeah.
As much as I love Finland, it's probably not a book on its own. The really obscure stuff like Norway and Slovakia aren't books on their own.
Greece probably isn't a book on its own.
Nope. But also Warlord have said that, I don't know, they said this right back at the edition, there was some tentative, like, don't expect a book for every army list, or even a compilation book for every army list. Do expect a PDF for all the army lists. So we'll see whether that means we don't get a Chinese book, because Warlord doesn't currently do Chinese figures, but we do maybe get a Chinese PDF.
Yeah, so maybe we get sort of that K47 concept where they do a PDF that gets updated.
Yeah, maybe. This is all conjecture, though.
Of course.
I mean,
Yeah.
we probably have really good odds of, off the top of my head, on the Allied side, Warlord have quite a complete range of Poles and Belgians. So I would say we have pretty good odds of getting those, and they do have a really comprehensive range of Finns and Hungarians, particularly the Hungarians. So I
So
would
maybe we'll
dare
get a
say
couple of double books. So
maybe
two armies in one book.
maybe we'll get a couple of double books. I don't know. Again, conjecture.
Yeah, and I think that because what we've seen with the theming special rules, which they all have a different name, but they all do the same thing. I think that's potentially a really smart way to do those different nations in one book, because you don't have to duplicate all your officer entries, etc. You sort of have a generic unit
Yeah,
at the
possibly.
start, and then you
Possibly.
give them a nationality choice.
Or we might see something where, like all of the major nations, every different nation has multiple different ways to do an officer, and therefore they have an officer profile that has all these different bits and pieces, but is different somewhere else.
Yeah,
And also, the interesting thing is like once we get past the army books, maybe there is room for Warlord to go back to some of those, for King and Country and go, cool, well, Brits have all of this interesting stuff. Now, what happens if we have an option for them to do Home Guard? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We're going to add an extra thing where you can upgrade all these extra units for this many points. You give them green like Home Guard have.
yeah,
Or they go, well, we have in a Soviet book, we're going to have a option to upgrade your officers and your artillery observers and your machine gun teams to be partisans, and add that fourth option to the list or that fifth option to the list, like down the track.
yeah,
And it's noticeable, like all of the get you buy lists are, and all of the army books are the V1 armies of books with a few bits and pieces added, and a stack of the V2 material, particularly I think almost all of the V1 units that were added in the V1 supplements, the V1 like campaign or theatre books, Jewel in the Sun, Battleground Europe, etc. Those have all made it into the books pretty much as new entries into the new books, but a very, very limited selection of the supplement units have actually made it into the books. Germany probably has the most, but like it was really noticeable that the Brits had a couple of vehicles from the supplements, but not a lot of the units. The Soviets really only got a handful of tank profiles that they didn't have in the V2 or V1 army book. Most of the infantry units, they didn't get new ones, but the ones that they had were tinkered with. Japanese don't look like they're getting a stack of new units, but they are getting there's an extra 30 profiles in there, which is a lot, but also the Japanese were one of the least fleshed out units that was the most fleshed out by the supplements.
yeah, yeah.
So I don't know, we'll see.
So there's heaps of opportunities.
There's lots of room.
Both of us has just got our floating crystal balls in front of us right now, guessing what might come.
It's an exciting crystal ball.
There's a couple of heads at Warlords games that know, and
We don't.
we'll find out as we go.
Yeah,
We'll sit here on the edge of our seats waiting to find out.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And try not to shill for other games in the meantime.
Maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit. Lots, maybe. What about
Yeah,
V3 for Perth, for our local bolt action community? What do you think? What do you think the reception here overall has been, and what do you think it's done for our community or to our community?
I think it's been a net positive. I've seen quite a few new players in the last 12 months come through at Outpost, so that's good. New players is always good. Some of them have thrown their hat in the ring for doing some tournament stuff as well, which is always good to see. Not that tournament play is the be all and end all or anything, but
Absolutely.
it is a really good way to learn. If you play your third game ever at a tournament, you play game 3, 4, and 5. By the end of it, you start remembering some of the rules.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's been a net positive reception. We've seen a few people. Or I haven't seen a few people around, which is a shame, but, life happens, and like we said before, there's no such thing as a perfect war game for everyone, so maybe it just hasn't floated their boat, or something else shiny came along, and that's fine. The people who I haven't seen, none of them have stopped playing war games. I just don't see them playing bolt action as much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah, look, I think it's been a net positive as well here in Perth. I don't know about elsewhere. Like, last year, I worked out I demoed bolt action to 8 new players, of which I have seen at least 5 go out and buy armies and start playing.
Yeah.
So that's, one every 7 weeks or so, I think. Maybe, might be closer to 6 weeks. I don't know. But a lot of new players, which I've been pretty impressed with, and a lot of them have hung around. I will admit my regular gaming group, the group I game with every week, wasn't really playing V2 at the end anyway because we were tinkering with other stuff, had other stuff going on, and V3 has, I think, pretty well killed bolt action in that group. Just, it's not for everyone, and that's fine.
Yeah. And it's
But
not
also,
like,
you know,
again, they're not playing war games.
Not playing war games, they're just playing other stuff. We're just playing other stuff. Frostgrave, other things. I'm playing Chain of Command with them this weekend, I said. Or there's definitely been a changing of the guard here in the sense that there is a decent number of players who've moved on to better and brighter things. But we're also seeing stacks of new players.
Yeah.
I will note that CanCon is slightly smaller than usual.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means for the eastern states. But also, they're running Conflict 47 at the same time for the first time ever. I don't know what the numbers are like for that. You never know which of them would be playing bolt action if they weren't playing Conflict.
Yeah.
But
that's always the risk at a multi-game tournament like that. We have it at Skulls as well.
Yeah, you cannibalize your own back player base. But that's really cool because Conflict seems to be doing really well in the eastern states, especially when I chat to the Sydney guys.
There's probably 4 or 5 people regularly playing it that I've seen at Perth. In Perth at Outpost.
The cool thing with that is most of them, I think, from the ones I've met, weren't playing a lot of bolt action or weren't playing bolt action. They're new faces. It's picked up a different crowd here.
Yeah, some of them were. Some of them were bolt action players, or at least bolt action doublers.
There's at least 1 or 2.
That's cool.
But yeah, that's cool. It's definitely been good for the game to have conflict there.
I mean, K47 forever sits on the horizon of, I could play that.
You and me both. It's just also like, it's not big enough, and I'm not invested in enough to be the person to build the community.
Yeah, I've got a few other games I'm trying to kick off, so...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like, I'm quite cautious starting new games. I try really hard not to start new games.
I know, and then you.
And when I do start new games, I try to repurpose whatever I've already got. Hence why I'm using Orcs of Marim's War initially.
Yeah.
But yeah, like hopefully we see K47 grow.
Yeah.
But yeah, bolt action's doing great over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I think that's really about it. Now we get to the ever critical, most important component of the conversation. Who is the Dice Forsaken this month, Jono?
Well, I've got a side one again. Just like last month. My dice have actually behaved themselves quite nicely this month.
You mean you've not put them in a situation where they can roll badly for you?
Correct.
Nice. The CanCon prep is paying off.
Statistical rolling is good as well.
Yes.
But I will say that when we played Wings of Glory, which was after our last podcast.
Yes, it was. Only a couple of days after.
Only a few days. Doesn't matter. It was after. So it counts in within the last month. I got shafted.
But that was a card-based game, so the cards forsook you there.
Yeah, so hence why it's dice adjacent. We played 3 games of Wings of Glory, and the first game, I think I was the first plane to get shot, and
there's a card in the deck. Explain that, the card in the deck.
Yeah, so when you get shot, you draw a damage card, and it gives you a number of damage points, which you keep super secret, and eventually your plane gets shot down. There is 1 damage card, or at least 1, but not huge amounts of them, which is a total destruction card, and I drew that as my first damage. So my plane was shot out of the sky, first shot. I blanked on the rest of that game because I was dead. Played the second game, and lo and behold, I think I might have been the second or third plane to get shot in that game, but guess who drew the total destruction card again? Me. So I got destroyed again. And then the third game, I think it was the third game this happened, it might have been the second game. But either way, the third game, one of our dear friends decided that he didn't like me very much in that game and flew through me. We collided in midair, and I drew the total destruction card once again. So
it was wonderful to behold.
I was on a hat trick. I think I took 1 point of damage before that last one.
Yeah, so otherwise everything died straight away.
Yeah, out of 4 cards, I drew 3 total destruction cards.
Yeah.
That was fun.
It was pretty spectacular.
Yeah. What about you, Jackson?
I have 2, and they actually, one comes from a game I played against someone else. So our dear friend Yukio, who's new to bolt action, they decided to try and assassinate I think it was a multi-launcher in his back quarter with a squad of scouts. And I went, there's a drilling right next to them. He's going to drive it out, shoot the scouts. The scouts are going to die. So I might as well try and take out this thing anyway. Move the scouts forward. The drilling pops out next dice to kill them. He rolls his 6 shots. He needs 3s on everything. He's within point blank. He just needs 3s. And he gets 6 1s and 2s.
Oof.
He was absolutely spitting chips.
Yes.
Justifiably so.
Yeah.
The other one, which was too spectacular to hear about, it's actually not one I've witnessed personally because it's from one of our listeners and good friends, Darren, over in South Australia. He jumped a officer and a squad of engineers out of Comsomolets when he was playing his fins and took some pins. And he was near a table edge, and he rolled to activate them. He snapped 2. His officer activated. Then his Comsomolets foobarred off and ran off the table. And then his engineers foobarred and ran off the table with 2 consecutive orders.
Ouch. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty spectacular and very low odds.
That's gonna hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was sending me photos and telling me about it, and it sounded horrendous. So yeah.
It does sound quite horrific.
Yeah, I raise Yukio and Darren as our mates who were forsaken by the dice this time around.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Well, given that we aim to do an hour episode and we've just hit an hour and 44 on the recording,
maybe a little bit less once we cull it.
Yeah, we'll cull a bit out. There'll be a lot of gaps in my talking that get culls out.
Same here. Lots of R's.
Yeah, so we'll say goodbye. Thank you for joining us. I hope you get through this one. It's quite a long one for our second one. There was just plenty of jibber jabber with V3. We have lots of thoughts on that. So with that, as we always say, just play better or blame your dice. Bye.